A couple of weeks ago, we talked about what Christianity is really about, and we said what Christianity is really about is eternal life. We saw that Christianity is not about things of this life. It's not a magic wand to get through this life. It is assurance of life after this life is over. And one of the main ways that has been expressed in Christian theology is through the idea of resurrection. It's not unfair to state that the major point of Christianity is resurrection. Resurrection is the main message of Christianity, and above all else, that's what Christianity is about. Resurrection. Our death on earth is not the end of us. Our death on earth is merely our death on earth. Now, the belief in the resurrection comes from the Bible, and it was a central belief in earliest Christianity. One of the earliest surviving statements of faith of Christianity is what's called the Apostles' Creed. We've talked about it before in here. Scholars believe that the origins of it were around 100 years after the time of Jesus, and it lists the essential points of the Christian faith, and it says, I believe in the resurrection of the body and the life everlasting. And that is the message of Christianity. I believe in the resurrection of the body and the life everlasting. From earliest times, Christians have believed in the resurrection. The basis of it is Jesus' own resurrection. The Jews killed Jesus on Friday. He was buried on Sunday morning. He rose from the dead. All four Gospels are clear that the grave was empty. It's not that Jesus just floated off into heaven in a spirit or something. It's that his body was not in the grave. He was real. After the resurrection, he had a real body. He appeared to people. They touched him. He even ate. As I said, it wasn't, as people try to say today, just that people felt Jesus' spirit still with them. It wasn't a ghost either. It was Jesus in a real body. And the Bible refers to Jesus as the first fruits of the dead. That means he is the first to be resurrected. But the New Testament tells us that we too will be resurrected just as Jesus was. And that's why we believe in the resurrection. That's hard to believe though, really. You know, it's one thing to believe that when you die, there's a part of you that will live on. It's another thing altogether to believe in resurrection, that your body will be resurrected. What age would you be? Maybe 20, 40, 75? How will you look? Even though you might be embalmed and buried in a casket in a vault, guarantee you one of these days that casket and vault's going to leak. And your body's going to lay there and deteriorate away. What about all the people that died before there was embalming and sealed caskets and vaults? And their bodies just became dirt. Went away. How will they be resurrected? That's why the resurrection of the body seems so far-fetched. It's so far removed from anything we've ever experienced or anything we think possible. And so when we think about the resurrection of the body, we're tempted to think, you know, that's probably something the Bible doesn't intend for us to take literally. We're not the first people to have had trouble with it. The very first generation of Christians had trouble with it too. And the reason I say that is because that Paul spends a lot of time talking about that in the book of 1 Corinthians. In chapter 15, he says, how can some of you say there is no resurrection of the dead? And then Paul goes on to make clear that this is the center of Christianity. Everything revolves around the resurrection of the dead. Because he says, if there is no resurrection, your faith is in vain. Now, the word used there, in vain, is useless. And so Paul is saying, if there is no resurrection, Christianity is useless. You see, Christianity is not just something to get us to be nice to each other, to get everybody to get along and be accepting and get along with each other and love each other. That's not what Christianity is about. Christianity is about resurrection. And Paul says if there is no resurrection, then we are of all people to be most pitied. If we try to make Christianity about nothing but this life, we are of all people most to be pitied. Paul makes clear that the resurrection is the heart of Christianity. And he makes clear that if you pull that out, you have nothing at all left over. And so the resurrection is central to Christianity. Christianity talks about eternal life, but not in the context of a part of you surviving death. Christianity talks about eternal life in the context of resurrection. Who you are, everything you are, shares in eternal life. You know, some religions see the person as being composed of two things, a body and a soul. The body is the physical you, the soul is the spiritual you, and they see those things as two separate things. They see the soul as more or less just residing in the body, just like you pour milk in a glass. The milk resides in the glass. And a lot of people see that like the soul exists separately. It could be in another glass and still be a soul, or it could be in a bowl and still be glass. But Christianity does not see you being composed of two separate parts. Christianity does say that you have both the body and the soul, but it says that they are both intertwined together and inseparable. The body is more than a container for your soul. The body is part of an essential you. Without the soul, you are not you. Without the body, you are not you. Both body and soul are necessary to make you. That's what Christianity says. The body and the soul are necessary. The body is as important as the soul. However, having said that, we go to 1 Corinthians 15, and Paul goes to great lengths to point out that the resurrected body will not be just like the old body. It's not just like the human body is resuscitated, in other words. It's not like that at all. It is that your resurrection body is a changed body. It will still be your body. It won't be totally new, but it will be changed. We talked about how Jesus' body was resurrected. His tomb was empty. His body was really not there. And he, in bodily form, appeared to many people after the resurrection. It's interesting that his body, in many ways, after the resurrection, was like his earthly body. He had scars of the crucifixion. He could eat. People could touch him. But in other ways, Jesus' body was different. He could appear in rooms behind closed doors. In some respects, it was the same body, but it was changed. Paul says that's how it will be with us. In some respects, our resurrection body will be like this body, but in other respects, it will be different. Jesus' body was not a totally new body, and neither will our resurrected bodies be totally new. The Apostle Paul likens it into sowing of a seed. The human body is the seed that is sown, and then something grows up from that seed. The human body is sown, Paul says, in corruption, but the resurrection body is incorruptible. Corruption means simply that the human body is subject to decay. And all of us in here are old enough to realize that our bodies are subject to decay. Just go back 30 years and think of the difference. Okay, Paul says that our human bodies are subject to decay. Our resurrected bodies will not be subject to decay. Paul goes on to say that the human body is sown in dishonor. That literally means limited. Limited. The human body is very limited. But Paul says our resurrected body will be glorious. That literally means magnificent. What once was limited will be changed to be magnificent. Paul says that our body is sown in weakness, but it is raised in power. We are all familiar with the weaknesses of our human body. Our resurrected bodies will not have those weaknesses. Paul uses these opposites to tell us that our resurrection body will still be our body, but it will be different. It will not be subject to decay. It will not be limited. It will be magnificent, and it will be powerful. And it's not only that our bodies are changed, it is that they are changed from physical bodies to heavenly bodies. Paul says that flesh and blood, the way we are now, cannot be in heaven. Earth is the physical realm. It is the realm of human bodies. Heaven is the realm of heavenly bodies. And Paul tells us that at the resurrection we will receive heavenly bodies. Paul talks about Adam being the first man, the first human being, the first earthly person. And Paul says that's what we are. We are earthly people, children of Adam, people of the earth, living in the physical realm. But Jesus was the first heavenly man, which means that Jesus was the first one to be resurrected into this changed heavenly body. Adam was the first to have the earthly body. Jesus was the first to have the heavenly body. And Paul says that just as surely as we bear the mark of Adam's earthly body today, so will we in the future receive the heavenly body just like Jesus. He says, as we have borne the image of the earthly, so we shall bear the image of the heavenly. Now we have a human body. Then we will have a heavenly body. So we will be changed from being earthly creatures to being heavenly creatures. That's why Paul calls Jesus the second Adam. The earthly Adam, and we're earthly creatures. The second Adam, the heavenly Adam, Jesus. And then we will be heavenly creatures. So Jesus resurrected as the first fruits of the dead, and we too will be resurrected as Jesus was. Paul talks about there being two stages in being a person. First, you are an earthly person, then you are a heavenly person. But it will still be us, just a different kind of body. And Paul goes on to point out how there are many bodies, heavenly bodies. When the Bible talks about heavenly bodies, it talks about things that we see in the sky. The earth, or the moon, the other planets, the stars, whatever's up there in the sky. And Paul says they're all different kinds of bodies. Remember, we've talked about in here before how in the view of the New Testament, those are not just dead, lifeless things up there. Those are spiritual powers up in the sky. And so Paul says there are different kinds of flesh and blood. There are human beings. There are animals, he says. There are birds, he says. There are fish. They're flesh and blood, just different kinds. Paul says that's how it will be with our bodies. We will have new heavenly bodies. And that's the meaning of the resurrection of the body. It's something we can't understand and comprehend. It's something beyond any of our experience. It's something we just have to take on faith. But you know, this should make a difference in how we live our lives. If you lived your life just knowing that this was it, you get one shot and it's over. Or if you lived your life just thinking that when you die, some spiritual part of you is just going to float off into some sort of universal consciousness, then you could see life as being a pretty tragic thing. You live your life, you do the best you can, you struggle and work and take care of all of your responsibilities, and then you end up sick and dying. It can seem very tragic. But we look forward to a day, a future where everything will be different, and different in a good way. No matter how our lives end on earth, they will not be tragic ending, because we are going to be changed into magnificent, powerful, eternal people, as we have borne the image of the earth, so we shall more bear the image of heaven. And that should put this life and the things that happen in this life into perspective. It's easy to get all worked up over things that happen. It's easy to get so worried and upset and troubled. It's like sometimes we act as if this life is the be-all and end-all of everything. But it's not. And then as we approach that time of our lives when we know our lives are going to end, sometimes it's easy to get discouraged and depressed. Is it all tragic? Was it all for nothing? No. It was all nothing more than a journey on our way to becoming something else. And that's why the Apostle Paul tells us to march through this life as conquerors, knowing that we are marching on to a future that's made possible by Jesus, in which we will be made into magnificent, powerful, heavenly beings. Even as we live our lives here on earth, we keep our gaze fixed out, way out there. We don't keep our gaze on the way things are. We keep our gaze on the way things will be. On the way things will be. And that is how a Christian should live their lives.